13. Their spirits have reached certitude. Through triumph and prosperity. Their eyes have been gladdened through gazing upon their beloved. Their settling place has been settled through reaching the request and attaining the expectation. And their commerce has profited through the sale of this world for the next. 3. My God, how agreeable for hearts are the thoughts inspiring thy remembrance. How sweet traveling to thee, through imagination upon the roads of the unseen worlds. How pleasant the taste of thy love, how delightful the drink of thy nearness. So give us refuge from thy casting out and thy sending far. And place us among the most elect of thy knowers, the most righteous of thy servants, the most truthful of thy obeyers, the most sincere of thy worshippers. O Almighty, O Majestic, O Generous, O Endower. By thy mercy and kindness, O most merciful of the merciful. 1. My God, were it not incumbent to accept thy command, I would declare thee far too exalted for me to remember thee. For I remember thee in my measure, not in thy measure. And my scope can hardly reach the point, where I may be a locus for calling thee holy. Among thy greatest favors to us, is the running of thy remembrance across our tongues, and thy permission to us to supplicate thee, declare thee exalted, and call thee holy. 2. My God, inspire us with thy remembrance, alone and in assemblies, by night and day, publicly and secretly, in prosperity and adversity. Make us intimate with silent remembrance. Employ us in purified works and effort pleasing to thee, and reward us with the full balance. 3. My God, love-mad hearts are enraptured by thee. Disparate intellects are brought together by knowing thee. Hearts find no serenity except in remembering thee. 15. Souls find no rest except in seeing thee. Thou art the glorified in every place, the worshipped at every time, the found at every moment, the called by every tongue, the magnified in every heart. I pray forgiveness from thee for every pleasure but remembering thee, every ease but intimacy with thee, every happiness but nearness to thee, every occupation but obeying thee. For my God, thou hast said, and thy word is true, O you who have faith. Remember God with much remembrance. In whom shall I seek refuge? If I seek not shelter in thy power, in whom shall I seek shelter? Sins have made me seek asylum in laying hold on the skirts of thy pardon. Offenses have compelled me to beg the opening of the doors of thy forgiveness. Evildoing has summoned me to dismount in the courtyard of thy might. Fear of thy vengeance has prompted me to cling to the handhold of thy tenderness. It is not right for him who holds fast to thy cord to be abandoned, nor proper for him who seeks the sanctuary of thy might to be surrendered or disregarded. My God, empty us not of thy defending, strip us not of thy guarding, and protect us from the roads of destruction. For we are in thy eye and under thy wing. I ask thee, by those whom thou hast singled out, thy angels and the righteous among thy creatures, to assign over us a protector through which thou wilt deliver us from destructions, turn aside from us blights, and hide us from the striking of great afflictions, to send down upon us some of thy tranquility, to wrap our faces in the lights of love for thee, to give us haven in thy strong pillar. 18. And to gather us under the wings of thy preservation, by thy clemency and thy mercy. O most merciful of the merciful. Though in the present context the word hack translates best as "right," it has a number of closely related meanings which should be kept in mind, such as suitableness, justice, truth, reality, correctness, properness, appropriateness, necessity, incumbency, obligation, due, and duty. A glance at the treatise on rights will quickly show that the word "rights" might better have been translated as duties, obligations, or responsibilities, since the treatise is not directly concerned with the rights of the individual, but rather with the rights of others which the individual must observe. Nevertheless, I think it is important to preserve the term "rights," if only to show that in considering human rights primarily in terms of responsibilities, Islam diverges profoundly from most modern Western views, though it has deep kinships with other religious traditions of East and West. Islam views the individual in his total context, which means that it considers first his relationship with God, then his relationship with God's creatures. What is important for the individual in his relationship with God is that he attain to salvation, or in other words, that he follow God's guidance, which is based upon mercy and directed toward his own best interest. In short, Islam devalues the individual's perspective, since human beings on their own can see no further than their immediate interests during life. But this devaluation of individualism is not a devaluation of the individual. On the contrary, it raises him to the ultimate pinnacle of importance, since everything is directed toward his happiness in the next world. Islam merely recognizes the ignorance of human beings and their inability to perceive their own ultimate good without divine guidance. Then it sets about to undermine and destroy individual ignorance, a process which involves deflating the ego and eliminating all self-centered desires. As a result, the human self or soul nafs has few "rights" but many duties and responsibilities. Or rather, the soul has only one true right, the right to salvation. The individual's right to salvation follows naturally upon God's right, which is to be worshipped without any partner, i.e. tawhid. The way to salvation is to obey God, and hence it is the soul's right to be employed in obedience toward Him. By His very nature, since His mercy precedes His wrath, God displays compassion and guidance, and through obedience the servant opens himself up to the full range of this compassion. In other words, partaking of God's mercy and compassion depends upon following His guidance, and following His guidance means following the Sharia as revealed through the Quran and the Sunnah. Hence the Imam speaks of being employed in obedience, as the self's key right, since only that can bring about its deliverance. As soon as this wide context for attaining to the right of the self is envisaged, dozens of duties become obligatory upon the individual. The Imam makes clear that the primary duties are toward the various organs and activities of the self, since these determine man's relationship to God. The organs have rights because they share in the individual's destiny. The resurrection of the body is taken for granted. Therefore, as here and also in 38:67, immediately after mentioning the great Naba, i.e. news, it is being disputed is mentioned, is the best evidence that the great Naba is the Khilafat al-Lahiyya, i.e. the vicegerency of God. In the extent of the dispute, no other religious questions can be compared with. Even people who have accepted all the fundamental articles of faith in Islam, such as Iman Billah, i.e. faith in God, the revealed scriptures and His apostle and the angels and the resurrection day, have failed in believing in the fact that God is always represented by a man on the earth who is the closest one to God by his absolute submission abdiyat, and the closest one to each individual soul by virtue of annihilation of limitations and temporal tendencies. In short, the man who has attained the state of fana phila, the absolute absorption, baqiya billah, R.al. asserting himself as entirely God's instrument. 14. Ali being the first man declared by the Quran and the Holy Prophet to be of this attainment and the holder of the absolute vicegerency of God, Khilafat and Wilayati Mutlaka. Some commentators such as Mohiuddin al-Arabi and others have suggested that the great news here and in 38:67 refers to Wilaya, or the vicegerency of Ali ibn Abu Talib, and no wonder this is the last vital test of man's submission to God's authority. Thus, in verse 4 and 5, Quran assures that man shall come to realize about the importance of that news. In the subsequent verses forwards, the process of creation is the evidence of the divine designs and the purposefulness of the creation which shall be achieved in the resurrection, from which can easily be inferred that such an important process of bringing up the matter from the lowest stage of its nebular form to the highest stage of the human form, cannot be without the ministry of a central entity as the medium between the absolute and the finite realms, species and entities. No society in its scientific sense is possible to take shape without a center of gravitation as the medium. In man, the highest organism, which is termed to be a microcosm, is in process towards the resurrection, which means a formation of a greater society wherein each man or a microcosm shall function as a part, cannot be left without a center, and the center of every society is formed prior to the formation of its satellite. On this basis the imamate or the khilafat of man was started first, and then the propagation of humanity followed, and this imamate will continue till the human society